Hello gamers, Sandrone is finally here, and although she might not be arriving in the form that we all would have hoped, she is here nonetheless, and it's still pretty exciting either way. Sandrone was a very highly anticipated character for me, and although I'm probably not going to pull her this time around, I definitely eventually want a spot for her on my account, and I thought we could go ahead and do a little guide video and also a quick banner review. Let's just get right into it. I don't know how the quality is going to look on the video, but the quality for me is really bad here, but it was the best one I could find. Of course, we have Sandrone here, also running alongside Sitlali, and of course for Sitlali the 4 stars are the same as well. Let's talk about the 4 stars. So we have Beidou, Diona, and Fremine. Now Beidou, the problem with Beidou is like generally a decent character, maybe not as much these days, but in the most recent Stellar Conduct buffs, she got a change, but the change is, I think, only to her C6 in terms of how useful it actually is for these Stellar Conduct teams. And the same goes for Diona as well, where her only buff is really to her C6. It's great that they're on the banner because you can start actually working towards these C6s if you don't have them, and also these are pretty old characters. These are very old characters, so it's pretty likely that you already do have them C6. They're not amazing characters until they hit C6, especially in the Stellar Conduct teams. They're basically useless until C6. And then we have Fremine here, which is interesting. I think I kind of understand what they were going for. I mean, one, Fremine is like a Fontaine character, so it just kind of fits the vibe of Sandrone. You know, if you don't know what Fremine does, he's kind of like a physical damage carry. You can build him physical damage. You can also build him cryo, so it kind of would make sense to lump him in with this sort of superconduct vibe. But as far as I'm aware, Fremine has not gotten any buffs at all, and physical is still kind of in the dirt right now in terms of just overall Genshin meta perspective. So I understand what they were going for, and it's been a really long time since I think I've seen Fremine on a banner, but probably not the best teammate for Sandrone. Fremine is just kind of here, just kind of chilling. This is the weapon banner. Not the most high resolution picture there is, but it's the best I could find. We have Sandrone signature with Sitlali signature, sack bow, fab sword, sack frag, dragon's bane, and rain slasher. I've seen some uses of sack bow on characters like Diona, Fab Sword, one of the best weapons in the game. A lot of characters, a lot of supports just really want Favonius weapons in general, so it's pretty good. Sack Frag is pretty good on some characters like Sucrose. Dragon's Bane definitely has its uses, especially on like Raiden or something if you're playing her in Hyper Bloom. And Rain Slasher isn't the most terrible option on Sandrone. You can use it, but there are definitely some free-to-play options that are just better, so kind of not really any reason to use Rain Slasher here, but here's a quick little overview for Sandrone if you're completely clueless. So despite having a similar charge attack playstyle to Neuvillette, she is actually a Claymore wielder and she is a cryo element. She also does like direct Stellar Conduct damage in her kit. She has Stellar Conduct like multipliers. She creates the Polestar field, so she enables the Stellar Conduct buffs for other characters, and as of this update, this Sandrone update, she will be the only character that can do this. The only character that can trigger this Polestar field, but of course this is almost certainly going to change in the following update. So how does she work? So when you trigger Superconduct, you create a Polestar field, which enables the new buffs for all the applicable characters like Diona, like Beidou, like Chi-Chi, like Yai. And when you do your charge attacks, you do these, again, these very similar to Neuvillette style charge attacks. They generate heat, and there's going to be this little heat gauge, and after I think like 3 sets of charge attacks, you will overheat, and you will not be able to do any more charge attacks during this time. But you have a skill, and when you use your skill, it reduces all of your heat, but if you use your skill when you're above 50 heat, you actually start to get buffs down here, and I don't know how readable this is for you guys, but I can read the most important parts. All you really need to know is as your heat goes down from using your skills, you start to get stacks. These stacks increase your damage not only for your skill, but also for your burst. You shouldn't really have to worry about this too much because it kind of just, it's one of those passives where it just works, and if you just play her normally. It's not like it's something you need to try to max out. You need to try and optimize. It just kind of happens. All you really need to do is make sure that when you're doing charge attacks, just do charge attacks until you overheat and then use your skill. There's no reason to use your skill outside of not being overheated, right? Unless you're just using it for like movement or something in the overworld. But then her burst is pretty good. It's actually a very heavy part of her kit. Like it does a really good portion of her damage. That leads us into the talent priority, where most of her damage is coming from the normal attacks, based, the charge attacks, and also her burst. That is her primary source of damage, and it should be prioritized. And the skill has some pretty decent multipliers on it. I'm gonna go back really quickly here. If we look at this line, it says when using the elemental skill, if Fagio's decoding power is greater than 50, second prism shot fired by Fagio at nearby opponents will deal 400% of its original damage. This is why her skill is pretty important to level up as well, because it is a pretty good multiplier, and you will probably eventually want to max it out, but her normal attack talent and her burst talent are way more important still. Just keep in mind that her skill is a good thing to level as well, but definitely the last thing on the list. And as an on-field character who's doing a pretty good portion of damage on your team, she's attack scaling, enemy defense multiplier, whatever, level 90 is going to be pretty decent. So Sandrone is a pretty high investment level character. She does kind of want every single talent to be pretty well invested. You don't have to fully invest in all of it. Like you could, for example, just get away only investing in her normal attacks and burst and leave her skill at like level 1. But if you really do want the most out of her, level 90, normal attacks, burst, and skill all together really all are applicable to her damage. So, okay, we can talk about her constellations a little bit. Overall, her constellations are actually not that amazing. From C1 to C6, it's not amazing relative to, a modern 2026 C6 character. If you want to look for vertical investment and you want to really be smart about how you're vertically investing, it's probably smart, of course, to just wait for support and get constellations maybe on that support instead. So her C1 is essentially just 30% stellar conduct damage bonus, which is pretty bad. She also has like charge attacks have less heat generation and whatever, but I kind of think that just doesn't matter because her skill cooldown is really low. So overall, you're just getting 30% stellar conduct damage bonus, which is like, I think Yai gives 50% stellar conduct damage bonus at C1. So it's just kind of a really weird C1. And obviously it helps, but it's just relatively, it's kind of bad. The C2 is pretty nice. You get a stacking crit damage bonus to your charge attacks after every hit. So I think it starts at 40% crit damage bonus, and after every hit, it goes up 20% crit damage bonus, with the last beam at 100% damage bonus. It's pretty good, but you have to keep in mind that Sandrone's damage distribution is split between her charge attacks and her burst. So her C2 isn't really buffing all of her damage. It's just buffing her charge attacks only, which is still good. But again, a good portion of her damage is coming from her burst as well. Her C4 just gives an extra stellar conduct damage instance that can occur once every 4 seconds. It's kind of whatever. And her C6 is what gives you the Nouvelette beam at the end of her charge attack. And you also get 20% stellar conduct elevation. So her C6 is pretty good, but overall from C1 to C6, it isn't amazing relative to other constellations that we've seen lately. Okay, let's talk about her artifacts. So the 4-piece Disenchantment in Deep Shadow, which is the new Superconduct set, is the best in slot by far. And for the main stats you want to use attack percent, and crit. Do not use Cryo Goblet. She does do cryo damage, but you do not want to be using a Cryo Goblet. It's kind of similar to Anepa in the sense where, you could put an Electro damage bonus goblet on her, but that's not buffing any of your lunar damage or anything. Same goes here for Sandrone. You just want to use an attack percent goblet. That's what's actually going to scale her damage. And in teams where you are lacking EM buffs, EM Sands or an EM Goblet actually is not that far behind. So keep that in mind. If you have a really good EM Sands from like Nefer or something like that, you could run that on Sandrone and it wouldn't be that far behind attack percent. So now Sandrone's burst is in a place where it's good enough to build ER for it, And also, you don't really have to build that much ER anyways, because a lot of her teams are going to have pretty decent energy generation. So you're probably going to have double Electro, which already increases energy generation by a lot. So you do want to be building ER, and ER is a good stat on her. It's obviously very hard to give an exact number for ER because everyone's team is going to be different, and some teams are going to require a lot more ER. Like if your team has no Favonius on it, no double Electro, she might need a lot more ER than usual. But if you're running like double Electro and like 2 of them have Favs, maybe you'll need only like 120 ER, maybe 130. You really just have to see what teams you're running and adjust accordingly. All right, let's talk about her weapons. This graphic is from Meowtoo's, so all credit goes to Meowtoo's. As you can see, her SIG is at the top. Of course, you have the usual like stat sticks as well up here. The most likely free-to-play option being the R5 Tidal Shadow, which is the Fontaine craftable. And we have the event weapon Male Flower here as well. And there's also the Lithic Blade, which is an interesting one if you've gotten that one in the past. And you might want to be a bit careful with crit rate weapons, because it is pretty easy to overcap. Sandrone ascends with crit rate, and also her set gives her free crit rate as well. You're also going to have Prio Resonance most likely in the team, which is another 15% crit rate. Again, very easy to overcap on crit rate here, so just be careful about that. Talked about the Lithic Blade. It requires leeway characters for the passive to actually be effective, but Chi-Chi and Beidou are pretty good teammates, so there's your leeway teammates right there. And I think ER weapons can be considered. So the Melazine event weapon, which is like the Mega Overlord sword or whatever, or something like Skyward Pride that has some ER on it as a main stat. Those can be okay if you really have a good set that just happens to have 0 ER and you really need it, then you can consider some ER weapons like that, but generally not the best. Okay, let's talk about her teams and her best teammates. So we're talking about Stellar Conduct here. It's going to stay in the Stellar Conduct archetype, which means she's pretty restrictive. She kind of only wants Cryo and Electro teammates for the most part. As of right now, Yaimiko C1 is the best teammate, and it's not really even close. YC1 is really good. She's doing a ton of damage. She's buffing Stellar Conduct by a lot. Pre-Snezhnaya, Yaimiko is one of the best Stellar Conduct supports right now, / sub DPS. She's very good, and she's so good that she's probably going to have a pretty strong presence going forward as well. It's almost certain that in Snezhnaya, they're probably going to release a counterpart to Yai that's like also a 5-star Electro that also does off-field Stellar Conduct damage and buffs it. I still think Yai is just such in a really nice spot still. I really can't see her being made completely irrelevant in this region, so I do think Yaimiko C1 is still a good investment. Diona C6 is quite good. She's got the Stellar Conduct buffs, she's got the EM buffs, and Chi-Chi is surprisingly good, especially from the place where she used to be. She now buffs Stellar Conduct, she has some energy generation, some particle generation, and her burst does some pretty good damage now as well. Also, some of the teams have been using Escoffier as one of the better teammates. I think Escoffier is in a spot where she's kind of only good because there isn't anything better right now. We're in a pretty early stage of Sandrone teams right now. Her team is far from premium. It's probably going to look completely different by the end of Snezhnaya. So Escoffier right now is a pretty good slot. She just has some nice off-field damage. She gives some Cryo Res Shred. Beidou C6, pretty okay last slot, not amazing. Beidou's damage kind of struggles in single target, which seems to be the more common type of content that we fight these days. It feels like Abyss has been a lot more catered to single target damage as of, the past year or so. And of course you have Stygian, which is only single target. We also have attack buffers. So Nicole, Bennett, and Janssen are actually very good for Sandrone. Obviously Sandrone is an attack scaling character, so giving her a bunch of attack buffs, surprise, it's very good. And Nicole is one of the better ones because shield is really nice, and you're most likely going to have, if you're using Yai on the team, if you're using Escoffier on the team, these are both attack scaling characters. Nicole gives an attack buff to the whole team versus Bennett and Janssen, who just give it to the active character. So Nicole actually benefits these teams quite a lot, giving an attack buff to, let's say, Yai and Escoffier and Sandrone all at the same time. Also not too sure about the movement of Sandrone. I don't know how well Janssen is going going to work with that. Maybe you might need C4 for it to work properly, but you guys get the point. Attack buffers are going to be good on her teams. Sucrose is pretty good. Obviously, you're in a reaction team where a lot of your damage is coming from reactions. Sucrose gives massive EM buffs to everyone on the team. It's always going to be pretty good. And you could always run her on Thrilling Tales if you want to give Sandrone a 48% attack buff from Thrilling Tales. Probably not your best option, but again, Sandrone teams are in their pretty early phase right now. Also have Shalonin. Shalonin can shred Cryo and she can shred Electro. Overall, just kind of like a side option. If you really just don't have anyone else who can provide like any value on the team, you can always just slap in Shalonin there and it's gonna be fine, right? And if you really just don't have like anyone on this list, but you also happen to have Columbina and a Nefa, you can do a Benefa team because luckily Electrocharged / Lunar Charged allows Hydro and Electro to coexist on an enemy at the same time, and the Cryo actually interacts with both of those elements and does superconduct and freeze at the same time. So you're actually not going to be that like strapped for reaction. It's not going to completely eliminate all of your lunar charged reactions. It's not going to completely eliminate all of your stellar conduct reaction. Benefa can work if that is something you're interested in and you really want Sandrone and Columbina to work on the same team. Like, I really want them to work on the same team. Now we can get into a little bit more speculative territory, the future prospects of Sandrone and her teams and possible relationship with other characters and like synergies with other characters in the future. It's almost certain that premium units for Stellar Conduct will release during Snezhnaya. I think this is a no-brainer. Her teams are going to look in a pretty ancient phase right now, where, you know, we're using Diona C6, we're using Beidou C6, we're using Chi-Chi, we're using Yai C1. These characters are most likely going to be replaced relatively quickly. And because of this, I think Sandrone, just the fact that she is making use of this new Stellar Conduct reaction, which is going to be, I assume, essentially the new meta for Snezhnaya. I can't imagine Sandrone won't be meta relevant for all of Snezhnaya. She probably will be. With her premium team, her damage is probably going to be extremely high, and of course making use of the new Stellar Conduct mechanic means she's going to be fine for all the new shield bosses. We don't know what the other Snezhnayan units are going to do yet. We don't know if the Tsaritsa is going to be a DPS, a support. We don't know if they're going to release like a Stellar Conduct sub DPS first or a Stellar Conduct support first. But I really cannot see Sandrone being pushed out of the meta very quickly. For me personally, I'm going to hold on a little bit longer. I really want to see the kits of some other characters come out first and possibly wait to pull a support maybe first as my first Stellar Conduct pull, and then move on to a DPS afterwards, maybe get Sandrone on a rerun. That is sort of what I'm looking at. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Overall future prospects of the characters. Do you think Sandrone is going to hold up? Do you think they're going to introduce another DPS that's going to outshine her relatively quickly? Are you going to hold off on Sandrone? Are you going to wait like I am and maybe get her on a rerun and stick to just getting a support for now? But thank you guys for sticking around to the end here, and I will see you around. Bye bye.